Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mideles and I'm your host here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. Got a great program lined up for you today. In just a little bit, our El Paso correspondent, Julian Rezendes, is going to be joining us to talk about a few different things, including some developing news on those missing miners just south of the border, as well as some new reporting out of Mexico City when it relates to the Tren de Aragua gang from Venezuela. So we'll have him on in just a little bit to fill us in on those subjects. But first, as always, let's go ahead and start today's program by taking a look at what's trending across the border, starting with the men overseeing the agencies carrying out President Donald Trump's mass deportation crackdown across the country are testifying in Congress today. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons, Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Rodney Scott, and Citizenship and Immigration Services Director Joseph Edlow are appearing before the House Committee on Homeland Security. Trevor Shirley has all the latest from Capitol Hill.
This is the first time leadership of ICE and Border Patrol are testifying following the shooting deaths of two people in Minnesota by federal agents. That hearing got underway earlier this morning. Acting Director of ICE Todd Lyons is there, along with Rodney Scott, the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection. Democrats are, as expected, pushing for more answers about the tactics both agencies have used since President Donald Trump returned to office. They're also pushing for more information about the investigations into the shooting deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, who were both shot and killed during confrontations with federal agents in Minneapolis last month. Since those killings, the administration has taken steps to lower the temperature in Minneapolis by withdrawing around 700 federal agents. Today, Republicans are also asking the agencies about the potential impact of Democrats' demands that federal agents unmask and end roving patrols. Today's hearing also comes as both parties try to work out a deal to fund the Department of Homeland Security, which oversees both ICE and Border Patrol. This morning, ICE's acting director says the agency continues to analyze the shooting deaths of Good and Preddy.
While the investigations remain ongoing, I'm encouraged that some Minnesota officials are finally signaling the willingness to cooperate with ICE. But let me be clear, promises are not enough. We need action. In the wake of the unprecedented border crisis of the previous administration, ICE has stepped into the breach to enforce the law.
The safety of law enforcement and the communities they serve and protect must always come first. When officials or elected leaders rush to conclusions about law enforcement or their fellow Americans, public trust suffers. There must be complete and impartial investigation.
DHS, led by Secretary Kristi Noem, must be held accountable for its lawlessness immigration operation. They are reckless, creating chaos in our communities, terrorizing adults and children alike, and undermining our moral authority as a nation of liberty and rule of law.
Democrats are also calling for the impeachment of DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, but as of now, they don't have the votes to make that happen. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley, KTLA 5 News.
Now, Lyons is likely to face questioning over a memo that he signed last year telling ICE officers that they did not need a judge's warrant to forcibly enter a house to arrest a deportee. The memo that went against years of ICE practice and Fourth Amendment protections against illegal searches. In other news, a Texas congressman said he believes Greg Bovino, the former commander at large of the Border Patrol, escalated the situation in Minnesota. Republican Mike McCall, whose district stretches from Austin to Houston, referenced widespread protests taking place in Minneapolis over federal immigration operations in the state before turning to Bovino. He said, quote, "All this created a perfect storm for our officers being thrown into the situation, and then Agent Bovino came into the picture. And I would argue, in fairness, that he escalated the situation by the way that was handled." He went on to say that, "I believe that these roving patrols should be done at the border rather than in the major cities of the United States." Bovino was demoted after the death of Alex Preddy at the hands of federal immigration officers in Minneapolis last month. Federal authorities have denied attempting to expedite an end to asylum claims by the family of Liam Conejo Ramos, the 5-year-old boy who was detained with his father during the immigration crackdown that has shaken the Minneapolis area. Images of the little boy wearing a bunny hat and Spider-Man backpack surrounded by immigration officers stirred outrage over the crackdown. A lawyer for the father and son told the New York Times that the government was attempting to speed up the deportation proceedings, calling the actions extraordinary and possibly retaliatory. The government denied that. They said, quote, these are regular removal proceedings. They are not expedited removal. Department of Homeland Security official Tricia McLaughlin said in a statement, adding, there is nothing retaliatory about enforcing the nation's immigration laws. The attorney told the Times that an immigration judge during a closed Friday hearing gave her additional time to argue the family's case. And that is a look at what's trending across the border. Remember, you can always keep up to date on these stories and all the stories that you see here, plus more from our correspondents from El Paso, here in South Texas, all the way out to San Diego on borderreport.com. And speaking of our correspondent in El Paso, it's time now to bring in our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendiz. Julian, you have some developing news on that situation with the missing minors just south of the border. Fill us in, sir.
Yes, Rudy. Good to be back. Just to fill in our audience, on January the 23rd, a Canadian mining company operating a silver mine in Mexico, specifically in the town of La Concordia in Sinaloa, about 50 miles west of east of the resort city of Mazatlan, informed the public that 10 people have been taken from its premises. Later, we learned that those 10 people were associated with the mining operation. Mexican media identified some of them as engineers, as environmentalists, as geologists, and also as security guards providing their services for the Canadian firm out there in Sinaloa. Just yesterday, we spoke extensively about what could have happened to those miners and how the cartel violence, which is ongoing in Sinaloa, likely had an effect in their disappearance. Well, last night, speaking of breaking news, we learned from about the Mexican government, as well from the Vancouver, Canada-based mine, that indeed we have some news regarding the miners. Mexican authorities say that they found a clandestine cemetery very near La Concordia. In that cemetery, according to a statement released by the Mexican Attorney General's office, they have located 10 bodies. Those 10 bodies, 5 have been identified, and families are being notified of their loved ones' demise in the states of Zacatecas, Sonora, Guerrero, and in Chihuahua. And yes, the 5 are being identified as some of the missing miners. I don't know if we have the image. One of them is from Chihuahua, Mr. Jesus Antonio de la O Valdez. The Chihuahua College of Environmental Engineers actually changed its Facebook profile to reflect Mr. de la O Valdez's photo in recognition of his service to the profession, his commitment to making the world better through preserving the environment in the workings of industry. So it's pretty clear that it is the miners. The other 5 bodies, Rudy, I can tell you that our Mexican officials continue to try to determine the identities of those other 5 bodies found there. But we do have some other breaking news from this morning. The Mexican Public Safety Secretary kind of cleared up a little bit of the mystery surrounding these tragic events. We have some images of him talking at a press conference, and what he's saying there is that they have 4 people that they suspect are the kidnappers in custody, and those 4 people who were arrested by the Mexican army after a very large, widespread show of power, they are starting to talk, and they are saying, we work for the Chapitos faction of the Sinaloa cartel. In this, we thought they were enemies, they were rivals from the Mayo faction of the Sinaloa cartel, and that's what happened. So yesterday, I think I did mention that even though sometimes people, professionals, good working people are not specifically targeted, but they do fall under the collateral damage of the cartel wars.
Yeah, and that's something we've talked about a few times here on the program, and I know you've been covering it for a long time. Just for example, a few years ago here in across the border from Brownsville, Texas, about 30 miles away from us, in Matamoros. Some tourists that were here from Florida, South Carolina area. They were here for some medical tourism, get some cosmetic surgery done for a little bit less price to the pocket there. And they were caught up, ended up injuring, a few being wounded, two being killed in that attack in Matamoros, all because of a little confusion, getting kind of caught up in the crossfire. But it's just one of those things that, as we talked about on yesterday's program, the level 4 travel advisory for Tamaulipas, and I'm sure, I haven't looked yet today, but I'm sure there is some sort of travel advisory for the state of Chihuahua as well.
Yes, and let me tell you, speaking of tourists and of Sinaloa, the state of Sinaloa, where the Sinaloa cartel infighting has claimed about 2,000 lives in the past year and a half. Speaking of tourists, there's also some more breaking news. We have learned today that 4 tourists from Mexico City who were in Sinaloa, close to Mazatlan, and just they were out with their family. They rented some beach vehicles, some racers. They were also abducted along with a woman and a child, a female child. The woman and the child have since been released, but these 4 tourists remain missing out there. And of course, again, the authorities suspect some cartel tie. Again, we are fairly certain these were just visitors not engaged in any sort of particular crime. Could be another case of mistaken identity. And it goes back to what I said yesterday, Rudy. They may not be targeting visitors like you or me, but at any point, something could go wrong. There could be a case of mistaken identity. There could be somebody high on drugs, and the results could be catastrophic. So I'm not saying don't go to Mexico, just take good care.
Yeah, and it kind of goes back, I think, I can't remember what month it was, but a few months back, you actually reported on a young man, was it from New Mexico, that was shot and killed while he was just over visiting family, got kind of caught in the crossfire between some cartel violence?
Yes. Again, like I said, anybody crosses the border, and the border is fine. There's a lot of people. We all have a lot of us have family ties. Some people have business ties with the maquila operations down there. But at any point, something could go wrong, and we could get caught in the crossfire.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Julian. Julian, stick around, and you at home stick around as well, because when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with some new reporting that Julian has out of Mexico City involving a Venezuelan gang, the Tren de Aragua. So stay with us. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to this edition of Border Report Live. Getting back to Julian in El Paso in just one moment, but wanted to bring you this headline as well. The Department of Homeland Security says that in the last 13 months since President Trump returned to office, 2.2 million migrants have voluntarily self-deported from the United States. Some are eligible for what DHS calls an exit payment of $2,600. While advocates urge migrants to seek legal advice before giving up on the American dream, some have left the U.S. for fear of being deported. One woman, Carmen, spoke to us from Juarez, Mexico, just right across from El Paso. She and her family fled Venezuela, stayed at Juarez migrant shelters for years until they were granted asylum and allowed to live in the U.S. But 2 years later, she is back in Mexico. Her husband and son are being held in an ICE detention center in El Paso. In Spanish, she told us they were living a good life in the United States and they felt they were protected, but it turns out they weren't. Carmen said the U.S. is worse because of ICE. And going back to those payments, we've discussed this here on Border Report Live. Lawyers, immigration attorneys for people who have self-deported said they have yet to see any of those payments. We are working to see if anybody that has self-deported has gotten any of those payments. And of course, we'll keep you up to date here on Border Report Live and borderreport.com. Wanted to bring our El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz back in now to give us that new reporting about some criminal activity that was discovered in Mexico City involving the Tren de Aragua game. Julian?
Yes, Rudy. Before we move on to that story, let me go back to the clip we just played of that Venezuelan family who told us that they self-deported from the state of New Mexico because they feared being deported by ICE. What happened is that the men in the household, the woman's husband and the woman's son, they were detained by ICE, placed in a center, in a detention center, and have received their final orders. So what the family is fearing is, well, the same can happen to us, and then they're going to fly us back to Venezuela, where there is still some chaos. There's still a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen after former dictator Nicolás Maduro was extradited to the U.S.? There's a fragile piece there, and they are afraid that we get caught by ICE, we'll be deported to Venezuela. So they crossed the border, and they're staying now in Juarez, which, like you mentioned, they became familiar with during the months that they stayed in that city while waiting to enter the U.S. Under an asylum claim. Now, what I wanted to bring up, Rudy, is that I spoke to a couple of immigrant advocates here in El Paso, and they told us, well, we don't know the particular circumstances of this family because we have not interviewed them, but we really urge any migrant in the United States who is afraid of ICE, before taking such an extreme decision, to please consult with an attorney or seek immigration advice from a qualified source, such as the many nonprofits here on the border that specialize in either caring or providing some sort of guidance to migrants. One thing that they told us is if you make the decision to leave the United States to self-deport, be aware that your case, your immigration case, your asylum case, is probably going to be considered abandoned. And later on, perhaps when you see or you think that there's a new administration at the White House that's more friendly to you, that's still going to be on your record. So by all means, please think twice before self-deporting. Now, moving on to the story that you mentioned, yes.
Well, sorry, I was just going to ask real quick, is that something that they're kind of hoping for, that the next administration would be friendlier and they're already just right on the other side, able to knock on our door to come back in?
We have spoken to a lot of migrants, third country migrants, not from Mexico, who are staying in Mexico, who remain after President Trump took over and pretty much ended the asylum process or suspended the asylum process. They do have that hope. They hope that even this administration, perhaps, if they feel that the administration loses power at the midterm, is going to change its mind. But they are definitely hoping that a new administration is going to come in and at least reopen the border to asylum, if not just fully reopen the border. So yes, that is certainly a hope of the families that, from other countries that remain in Mexico.
All right, thank you so much for that, Julian. Now, getting back to the other story you have for us today.
Yes, Rudy. The gang Tren Agua originated in a Venezuelan prison, and we first took notice of it a few years ago when they were trying to sneak into the U.S., and as a matter of fact, many of them actually did, under a false asylum premises. We became aware that this is a gang that engages in multiple criminal activities, such as drug trafficking, drug sales, and something very worrisome that we don't regularly see here on the border or even is widespread in the United States, and that is the sexual exploitation of women. Tren de Agua twice now, as far as I know, has been involved in human trafficking / exploitation of women cases at least twice in Mexico. The previous case that I covered involved the murder of one woman who apparently wanted out. So this morning I learned that 6 members of Tren de Agua were arrested by Mexican officials in Mexico City as part of a human trafficking investigation that involved the sexual exploitation of women. These gang members are now in prison in Mexico, and the Mexican government tells us that they're talking to the U.S. to see if they can identify some links of this group in Mexico City to the United States, or if they can identify the financial assets, so they can seize financial assets.
Now, is that something common for these groups to have financial assets on this side of the border?
Yes, we have discovered that as part of the those who came during the migrant waves, who snuck in during the migrant waves, they resumed their organized criminal activities. We have a couple of cases, one in Colorado, one right here in El Paso, where the gang was operating and trying to make money. And the whole purpose of their criminal activities, obviously, is to make money. To what level are they organized? Do they have bank accounts here in the States, or maybe bank accounts in some third country, like the Cayman Islands, to use a cliche, for instance? That remains to be seen, but certainly something that authorities, wherever they encounter them, are going to investigate.
As far as the sexual exploitation cases, have we heard of any of those cases that are busted here in the United States? I know recently we had a major case, a major bust in the city of Houston here in Texas. It was about 2 months ago, I believe. Are there any cases that have been linked to Tren de Aragua here on this side of the border?
Yes, certainly sexual exploitation instances were investigated right here in El Paso when the group allegedly set up an operation in a downtown hotel. They were accused of basically taking over at least some floors of that hotel for
Wow.
all sorts of criminal activities. So, yeah, those investigations have taken place here in the United States.
All right.
But certainly, in the case of Mexico, especially in Mexico City, which is huge, gigantic, there you can hide in plain sight. And as we know, and it's something that Mexico has been trying to fix, they tell us for the past 6 or 7 years, the arrest rate, the level of impunity remains a little bit high.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your reporting today, Julian. We appreciate you joining us. El Paso correspondent Julian Resendiz reporting on several topics for us today here on Border Report Live. We're going to have some more headlines when we come back, so stick around. Border Report Live is back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Border Report Live. As we talked about a little bit yesterday with our San Diego correspondent Salvador Rivera, during Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime performance, he briefly showed a popular taco stand from Los Angeles. And as we told you, you can imagine hundreds made their way to Via's Tacos to celebrate with the owner. Reporter Nicole Comstock has their story.
Obviously, the food here is really good, but the bottom line is people are so proud of this Highland Park establishment. And that's why so many people are waiting in a long line out here all night long to celebrate together with Via's Tacos. Via's Tacos! Tacos! Commanding his crowd of customers like a performer on stage, Victor Villa just can't come down from the otherworldly high of repping his small business in person at the Super Bowl halftime show.
If I can do it, so can you. Don't give up on your dreams.
And it's still a mystery to him why Highland Park landmark Via's Tacos was chosen for the show.
Like, why me? Yeah. I just know that the casting director, he reached out to me. He's like, hey, they're asking for you.
But we'd venture to bet Benito's people heard his story about the humble chef who started making tacos from his grandma's house in Highland Park and built a cult following with 3 locations around LA. Success he attributes in part to his immigrant family.
And I give thanks to every single one of you guys for making this possible.
He says he's been rehearsing for the last 3 weeks with the whole Bad Bunny ensemble because Benito wanted the show to feel like a collective.
Everybody needs to be in unison with each other.
And his customers are in unison about this. They've stood in a line out the door all day and night since because they're just so darn proud of their neighborhood taco joint.
I was like, oh, that is so cool. The whole concept was awesome, so I had to come out and support.
I stopped here, madness. It was just out of control. It was fantastic.
Something good out of the neighborhood today.
Victor says he's eternally grateful for every opportunity and wants Bad Bunny to experience what his customers do when they bite into one of these bad boys.
Benito, if you're watching this, or your team, I should have told you over there in Santa Clara, but like I got you on a taquiza. Like I wanna cater an event for you and your team, you and your family, as a token of my appreciation.
Or if Bad Bunny wants to have the full Highland Park experience, I'm sure he can just roll in here completely undetected and have a quiet night over some tacos. Reporting in Highland Park, Nicole Comstock, CBS LA.
I'm sure Bad Bunny will have to wait a couple weeks for the line to die down a little bit so he can actually enjoy those tacos in peace. What a great story that is, Nicole. Thank you. Just wanted to remind you before we go to check out our partners at Political Power Ranker. It's a weekly show tracking the movers, shakers, and rule makers in American politics. Nextstar's Director of Political Content, Chris Berg, and Director of Emerson College Polling, Spencer Kimball, break down who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on data. New episode dropping tomorrow morning. It's going to be hot. Some fresh polling on some races happening in North Carolina. And more importantly, fresh polling on races that are happening in the state of Minnesota. You know, that's been making headlines. So make sure to check it out. You can find out more on Political Power Ranker at abc27.com or your local Nexstar station's website. For Julian Resendiz in El Paso, I'm Rudy Mideles here in Harlingen, Texas. We'll see you next time.